Hey heroes, welcome back. Conversation about Rand's wives. Here we go. I mean, I don't know how this is going to go, what people are going to think here, but we did get some hinting from Rafe Judkins about maybe character combining and his wives. Who are we going to see? Are they actually going to be wives? I think is a question. So yeah, this is interesting. I'm excited by this information, but I'm also a little confused, but I'm hopeful. Sir Matt, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, we had talked about, some of these characters, that we go back to that Jordan Kahn video where he was asked some things and that he kind of skirted around the idea the topic of men, right? Like, like is Min going to be in season 1? And we were then at that point kind of thinking, is Min going to be in it? Like they can't cut her out completely. And so, you just think about all the things they can keep, all the things they are going to have to cut in order to make this work. I mean, if they're on this timetable, which some people are saying now is going to be 4 episodes a book, which would be roughly a movie timeline. You figure 8 seasons, 14. We did the math, and I think it came out to around roughly about 4 episodes would be a book. So you think about some of these characters, Min, could you have her, she shows up in book 1, and then she becomes a much bigger deal later. When do you bring them in with casting and everything? So we started to think about Rand's wives. Will we see them all in season 1? This is not necessarily marrying them, but just see these characters. We had tossed around the idea of them possibly being combined, maybe cutting some of these people out. Then we got that information from Rafe Judkins, where it seems like they're all 3 going to be there, but he may not marry them. So
I thought that was interesting.
Is that necessary?
Right.
So that's something to think about.
Well, and also it's we're talking about season 1 and maybe even season 2 and having some of the episodes scripted out or what have you written. And do we need to even address that topic yet? It's more like, will these characters be there? And I think people have been freaking out just a little bit, thinking like, oh, they're not going to show up, or he's going to combine them all into one character, like Egwene or something. And really, to ease all this, I'm glad that he went and did like a Q&A. It's been a while back on Instagram, but someone asked him, they said blink twice if Min is in season 1, and there's like these 2 winky faces where he's essentially blinking twice. To let the person know that, yes, essentially Min is in season 1. That's pretty cool, right? So same thing that he's doing with Logain is you're taking some of that story with Min and you're pushing it to the front. It's happening earlier. It's happening sooner. You're expanding the cast in a large way. I mean, we're also talking about hour-long episodes, which he pretty much confirmed. So I thought that was really neat. Now, here's something. Speaking of another one of his wives, he was asked this, will we have to wait until season 2 to see any Aiel other than, Rand?
Yeah.
And he said, nope. And the one that you will see, Amazon, and he's laughing. He says, Amazon shouldn't let me be on here when I've been cooped up. He's like, but the one that you will see will shock you. And so a lot of people are thinking, and we can go over in a separate video, like maybe who the potential Aiel will be that we will see, but the one that's relevant to this video would be Aviendha. And would you see Aviendha in season 1? And if we're going to see Min, maybe we're going to see Aviendha, and then maybe we're going to see Elaine. And I think that's nice. It's nice to hear that hopefulness. Here's a couple of things. Another question. So what words of hope would you offer a fan afraid that the show will cut out a lot of content? And he says this, I genuinely think that we are cutting less than most people think. When I see people asking questions like, are you cutting Min? It blows my mind. I don't know how to do an adaptation without some of these characters. I think it'll be more of the smaller stories you'll miss. We can't have Rand, travel to as many villages or inns as we see, which then cuts out a lot of those innkeepers and funny little side stories and maybe some dark friends that you liked or what have you. But so right there, kind of saying, yeah, Min's in it. We're good. Aviendha is strongly hinted at, and Elaine, I think, will be there as well. And that's pretty neat. Now, he gets into later sort of the idea. So here's the next question. So will Min, Elaine, and Aviendha have to be combined into a single character? And his response is hysterical. Girl, you crazy. I'm not going to combine huge characters like that. Maybe sometimes a minor character folding into a more major one. So we're not going to combine all three of those characters into one. Now, somewhere else along, I don't have it in front of me, but he did mention, as Sir Matt said, that we're not even at the point where we talk about whether they are married or any of that, but that these will be interests of Rand, and that seems to be something that he is going to continue with. So I think we're good. I think there might be a few other romances that we can look at down the line as to will they go the same way? Will they be tweaked or adjusted in some way? But I think I think we're good here. I think this is like the way he sees it, this is an adaptation of the books, right? So we're as close as we can. We're going to keep this to the books. And that to me, I was like, this is awesome, because there are so many fans who love each of those women or gravitate or are drawn to them in different ways for different reasons. And I think it's huge. It's important to keep them and for them to have a significant relationship with Rand, whatever that may be or whatever that's going to look like. I think that's important, and it's makes me hopeful that we got that kind of shirt up or hinted at a little bit. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, if Avienda's in season 1, it's like, wow, how far are we going, or what are we bringing forward? Right. I mean, is she in it because he has a dream and he sees some of the future, and so they have her, so they've already got her cast because she's going to be in season 2, and so that's just some of the things, some of the questions that you raise, right? I mean, Min shows up pretty early in the first book. We see Elaine obviously a little bit later in the first book, and then right at the beginning of the second book. So Elaine seems to me the most likely to show up. Min showing up is cool because that means they've got an idea of who that's going to be going forward. She's actually the character I'd almost say you could be fine not having her in season 1, and bringing her in a little bit later. So
yeah.
So it's just, it's going to be interesting to see how they push things around, right? Like, where do we get to?
Yeah, and I think the shocker is this. So Min, here's a couple things, and I would love for people to kind of leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. But like we talked about, I think it was just last week, Matt and I were talking about the idea that when you make these groups split up, when Perrin is split from Matt and Rand, and you get these in the books, you get 3 different groups. We talked about them being combined into 2. You may actually have Min just continue on with them. She actually may go with them in Eye of the World. That may be that would be very different, but you might just pick Min up and go, because the next time we see her after Baerlon is literally in Tar Valon, and you're like, how did she get here? She's of interest to the Aes Sedai, and so yeah. So that's interesting. And I think the big shocker, though, is Avienda, because if this first season is supposed to cover the first 2 books, Avienda doesn't, show up until much later. So you're really starting that story early on if you bring her in here. And I think that's important. I think that's probably a good idea to do, is to say, nope, these characters are all significant. Maybe at first they don't seem to all get along with Rand or even each other or whatever, but then it's going to, figure itself out down the line. So I think that's the big one is if Avienda were to be in season 1, if they're only covering the first 2 books, well, then clearly they'd be bringing in threads from much later in the series, at like to the beginning of this. And that's what I tossed out with Logain. I thought not just showing him being captured by the Aes Sedai and him being gentled in Tar Valon, but really even starting some of his story and what happens to him even in later books a little bit earlier too. So I don't know. They're packing a lot into season 1, and that's exciting. And I think people are going to be like, wow, this is doable. Because I think a lot of people have been saying, this is tough. It's tough to pull off a series this large and condense it into a TV show. Way better to do it in a TV show than in movies. But,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unless you wanted to do some Marvel thing where you said, this is going to be 25 movies, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, it's just interesting to think about, man. I mean, it's such a daunting task with so many books and so much limited time on screen, and then also, I mean, trying to produce this thing. I mean, this is an enormous undertaking for TV, really. I mean, because you're talking about something that I mean, more so than, I think a great comparison is sort of Game of Thrones. But like, man, I mean, you travel around way more in this than you do in Game of Thrones. So filming locations, I mean, there's going to have so much of it. How much of this is going to be
Right.
CG? Not that that matters. I mean, at this point, it's not like we're in the old days of CG looking bad or anything. So
Sure.
just just thinking about it. I mean, just trying to think the production's schedule of this is it would be so daunting. So just trying to have all these characters, have everybody cast. You don't want to recast people, so let's you shift this here, shift that there. So I mean, it's exciting.
It is
it's
exciting
to say the least.
Yeah. So let us know what you think. I mean, do we think? You think Aviendha is going to be in season 1? Do we think we're going to see all of Rand's wives? Are they going to be his wives? How early is that romance going to develop, or is there going to be a shift from Egwene pretty quick? That whole dynamic I think is interesting, and how Rafe will handle that is going to be fascinating. So again, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and remember that the horn has sounded.